Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. And thank you for joining me today at the Cloud 365 Teams Virtual Summit. I think there's been some pretty awesome sessions so far from what I've seen, so hopefully I can keep that going right now. Today, we're going to talk about how you can extend your intranet into Microsoft Teams. This is going to comprise of a few show and tell ideas to get you thinking, and I'm sure you're going to come up with a whole load of ideas yourself, so please feel free to put those other ideas and suggestions in the comments below. Or they might be on the sides, I'm not sure. One of them, I know. Put your comments in the comments and I'll discuss them with you. And I really want to have a conversation about other ways that people are finding to put their internet content into Teams. My name is Mark Stokes. I'm a SharePoint and Office 365 guy from a little place called Ramsbottom that's just north of Manchester in the UK. And I spend a lot of my time these days working with the Power Platform, including Powerups, Microsoft Flow, Power BI, and of course, Microsoft Teams. I have two businesses. The first one is RedPlane, and we do traditional software development, SharePoint projects, Office 365 migrations, that kind of thing. Also picking up a lot more Power Apps and Flow these days. So if you're interested in that kind of project work, please feel free to get in touch with me. My Twitter is @MarkStokes, and I'll be delighted to talk to you about that. The other business, we also have an Intranet in a box product called Atollo Intranet, and we get some really good traction with that right now. So that's going really, really well. So if you're in the market for Intranet solutions, please do check us out. The Twitter for that is @thisisatollo, or you can view the webpage at the website at www.thisisatollo.com. Now, that's the only selling I'm going to do today, so I think we get straight back into the content and talk about today's session. So what we're talking about today is channels. In the beginning, we had email and Outlook. And then people got bogged down in the amount of email that they were getting, so we needed a better way of organizing communication, so we built intranets. But people still used email and Outlook. So then we built them a load of collaboration sites. But they still used email and Outlook. So what we did, we went back to the intranet and we started to build some personalization options and extra functionality to make it very easy for them to go and use the intranet. But still, they use email and Outlook and copy and email documents around rather than actually storing them and using the intranet and collaboration sites like we wanted. But now we have another solution. We have Microsoft Teams. And finally, even though people are actually still using email and Outlook an awful lot, in my view too much, Teams is finally starting to take a piece of that pie. And I think what's happening is, I think we're starting to realize the difference between conversation and formal discussion. People are having conversations throughout their daily lives using things like Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Slack, Skype. Yes, I mean the consumer version that actually works. And then they're using the formal discussion via email. So if you want to summarize a meeting or acknowledge a decision or something like that, or newsletters and roundups, I mean, the formal discussion for me, that's what I like to call covering your own arse. So Microsoft Teams is coming in to fill what I think are some big holes that have been left by Skype for Business and Yammer. And they're taking on the conversation and the collaboration aspects. Now, don't get me wrong, Yammer's still a product, it's not going anywhere. Microsoft's told us that they're doubling down on it. Lots of organizations are very much using it successfully. But in my view, it's not quite achieving that enterprise social network piece that a lot of people are looking for. I think it's still very much separated out from the rest of the technologies that we're using. So Teams seems to be a place where people are going to have that conversation aspect, and I think that's potentially taking some of the space where Yammer's meant to fill. Now, people still want that enterprise social network. By conversation, we're breaking down whether people are working in their teams and the people they work with, or whether they want to talk to a wider audience in the business. So there's, again, a different scenario that we're looking at here. And I don't think they're really getting that enterprise social network piece from Skype for Business and from Yammer. The biggest issue with Skype for Business for me is the fact I don't find it really persistent enough in my life. We use Skype Consumer quite a lot for our project conversations because it just works on every single device we've got. It works on my laptop or my cell phone. It comes through to, I can even get them through my VR headset. So it literally comes into everything that I have and I get my alerts. Skype for Business just doesn't work for me as well. It doesn't sync quick enough. So it's not filling that hole for the conversations. Now, the other thing to bear in mind is your users don't engage with the business in the same way. So they need many different channels for us to get information to them. Bear in mind we're talking about intranet content here, so I'm addressing the internal comms people who are producing news, producing features, alerts, notifications, things like that. This is the content we're talking about that we're trying to get to users. So they use many different devices as well. Some people use laptops, some people use cell phones, people are starting to use VR headsets as well. So we need to catch people at the time and place that they're interacting. Now I've done many intranet projects over the years, and one thing is abundantly clear. Users don't go to your intranet to read your news. Let me say that again. Users do not go to your intranet to read your news. I'm sorry to any internal comms people on the call today. They don't. You care about it. You want them to see it. You want them to speak the same corporate language. They don't care. They should care, and we need to make it so that they achieve that, but that's not why they go to your intranet. They're not going to choose to go to your intranet homepage for that reason. What they go to the intranet for are selfish reasons. They go there because they want to book a holiday. They want to know how to raise a grievance. They want to see what's on the canteen menu or find somebody's contact details, like Eileen in HR, who they want to email or phone up to ask them to send the accident form rather than going to the form on the internet that would probably end up being quicker than phoning Eileen. But for them, it's still the path of least resistance to get the job done. So that's what they're going to do. Things like that. That's what they go to the internet for, not to read your news. So one thing to understand is the difference between passive and active content. I call active content to be the features and the content on the intranet that people are going there to actively find or actively engage with. And the passive content are things like your news, your features, your alerts and your announcements. And that's the passive content that you want them to see whilst they're there. Just spot a little thing that's interesting, maybe they click on it, go through, read it, and then they get all of the benefits of knowing what the business is doing that you want them to have. Okay? That's what I call passive content. So what we want to try and do is focus on building a multi-channel environment. Okay, we've said people interact with the business in different ways, so you need to figure out how to get your content to all those different channels that they use. Okay, some people are in Outlook all day. Some people are in Dynamics CRM all day. Some people are on their cell phones all day if they're on the road. And now we have Microsoft Teams as another channel that we're trying to drive people in and have them use that as a primary application. So what we need to do is focus on how we can push content out to them, because, as we said, we can't expect them to pull it from the internet themselves. But the rub is, we don't want to have to create or curate that content over and over and over. We don't want to create separate content for the internet, for Teams, for their cell phones, for email newsletters. We want to have one central source of content, one central source of authoritative content that we then push out to the rest of the channels. Okay? If we had to create content across all the different channels, it would be horrible. It would be error prone, and quite frankly, it would be boring. Okay? It's not a job that anybody's going to want to do. So what we're going to do is keep our content on the internet, that's our authoritative source, and then we're going to push out updates, notifications, and summaries to our different channels. Today, we're just going to look at Microsoft Teams as one of those channels, and that's what we're focusing on. So firstly, let's take a look at what Microsoft Teams is. We've already heard today a whole load of stuff about Microsoft Teams, and you've probably got a pretty good idea, but let's just summarize it in the concepts of our session now. Microsoft has been talking about loops for a while. So we've been talking about inner loops and outer loops, okay? You may have seen the diagram that I put on the screen now. And this is the official diagram that Microsoft put up, where they're trying to classify the different groups of people you might interact with. Your inner loop, those are the people you interact with on a daily basis, people you typically know or you work with on projects. They're your inner loop. And we tend to work with them with close technologies. That's kind of where Teams was originally designed to fit in. Okay, and then we have our outer loop, and that's where Yammer was expected to fit in. So it does fit in. So that's where we're talking to a wider audience, maybe special interest topics, things like that. People in the business we may not actually know, but that's the outer loop, the people we want to have those conversations with. Now, one of the questions is, well, Teams gives us a good conversation aspect, so why can't we actually just use Teams to fill that outer loop piece as well? And it's starting to move in that direction. And then we have the likes of SharePoint that sits in the middle of those loops, and that's where our content storage is. For me personally, I see SharePoint as an evolving technology. I think it's actually going back to the basics of what it does very well, which is our document and content management. And then we're actually servicing that content out through all these different technologies that we have now. So Teams and PowerPoint and Powerups and Flow. So SharePoint kind of sits in the middle of all of those loops really, but it becomes not an entity in itself, just a microservice that we can leverage elsewhere. Now, Microsoft has recently enabled organizational-wide teams. So actually, they're introducing the ability to do an outer-loop community within Microsoft Teams. And this is really invading on what Yammer's designed to do. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to replace Yammer. So if you are using Yammer, if you're happy with Yammer, don't think you need to quickly jump ship and use something else. Yammer's still perfectly valid. Okay, but we can actually start to do some outer loop work in Microsoft Teams. So let's just take a look at what a simple organization-wide team might look like. And this is the focus of what we're thinking about today. So taking it back to the topic, bringing your intranet content into Teams. So we want to really think about an organization-wide audience. So if we have a look here, it's a very simple mock-up where we have maybe a general. We can equate this to an all business or all company feed maybe. And then maybe we have different channels in Team for the different departments of the business. Maybe one for IT, one for marketing, one for sales, so they can have their own contextual content within there. Maybe we have a channel for office locations, for the different offices that we have, or customers or suppliers, whatever your information architecture is in your own business. We can very much model that within Microsoft Teams. Okay, so now we've got, again, a single application that you can actually go to just have all of your conversations with your inner loops and your outer loops. Maybe you want multiple intranet-focused teams, one for the different parts, because you don't want too many channels in a team. It's not a great UI for lots and lots of different channels, so you can structure that how you want. But the concept is we have an organizational-wide team that everyone is automatically a member of in Microsoft Teams. Now, straight away, when you look at this example, you can see that we've actually got a whole load of news items in here. You can see the published by me, and I'll explain why that is in a moment. But this is actually news that's come from our intranet. So the first way that we're actually going to look at bringing intranet content into Microsoft Teams is maybe a summary of content, maybe bringing our news topics in. So when we publish some news on the intranet, why don't we actually send that out to Microsoft Teams? Remember what we said before, we're getting content to the users where they are. So if I create news in my intranet, what I can do is I can use Microsoft Flow to then take a summary of the news story and post it into Teams. So when people are following those Teams channels, they see that pop up, it comes up as a notification, they read the summary. If they're interested in it, then they can click through to the intranet. The call to action is always back to the intranet, but they can click through, go to the full enriched experience they get on the intranet. But it's the passive content. We're getting it to them at the point that they're interacting with their day-to-day work. So to achieve this, what we're going to do is we're going to create a very simple flow, and that's going to detect a new or modified item in the news pages library, or it could be any other library. It could be a news flash from an alert or service status or a blog post, whatever you want to do. Flow will interact with it all. And then we can send that content over to Flow, and there's a few steps we have here that you can see, and what it will do, it will detect if it should send it to Microsoft Teams, and if it should, then it will send it over, and we can view it in Teams. So we'll go into a quick demo now, and I'll just show you how we set that up. Okay, so we've jumped straight in. We can see our intranet news center. Okay, and here we have a whole load of news items, and what we want to do is when these news items are created or modified, we want to send a message out to Microsoft Teams. So this is the flow that we're going to use, and it's quite straightforward. So when an item is created or modified in our news site and our pages list, now you may, one thing to point out here is we actually need to enter a custom value and put pages in here because it's a classic pages site. Flow doesn't automatically pick up this list type, so we have to type it in. However, everything just works as normal as you'd expect if we do that. Next thing we do is we initialize a variable called tags. When we create our news stories, we can actually tag them with a whole bunch of managed metadata terms. And we just want to iterate through to get a string list of all of those tags so we can put them into the post. What we do here is we check in a condition. So is send to teams equal to true? We have a field on our SharePoint library called send to teams. And that's just a yes/no field, and that basically gives us the ability to specify whether we should actually post into Teams or not. So maybe the author of the news story wants to make a few amends before they actually publish it out, or take a few days to actually create the news story before it gets sent out. So it gives them the ability to actually just say send to Teams, and then Microsoft Flow will pick it up, and then it will actually know whether to publish it out or not. So we can see here send to Teams. It should all be no. So if that's true, then what we do is we go and do a little loop. So we go and get all of the news tags, all the managed metadata tags from the news tags field, and we're just going to use a compose and then reset the variable. You can't reset a variable and use the variable value in it, so we just use compose to take the current variable value, add on the new news tag, and then we assign it back to the tags variable. And then what we do is we go and post the message into Microsoft Teams. So I just run this connection as my, I normally run it as my bot account, but it's just running as me now, which is why you'll see my name next to it. And we choose what Microsoft team we want to send it to, what channel it should go to, and then we just form the message. So we can just put some HTML in here, link the user back to the actual news story, who put the title in, the byline, who created it, the article date, and then fill out those tags from the variable. Now, the very last thing you want to do, and I've currently got this disabled in here and I'll explain why, but the last thing we want to do in here is we actually want to go and send that send to Teams value back to no, so that if somebody makes an edit to the news story in the future, it doesn't automatically repost out to Teams, unless they click that yes on that box and they say that they want to republish it. But by default, we don't want it to go out. I've disabled it now. There's a little problem on the news pages where if we try to actually update that value, I just get an error message saying the page is not checked out. There are some ways of checking the page out, making the update and rechecking it back in, but that's a little bit much for the conversation today. So what I'll probably do is put a video together another time that explains how we can do that. But for now, I'm just disabling it for the simplicity of what we're doing. Okay. Other list types, maybe if you want to send information out from a list into Teams, you don't have that issue. You can just go and update it. It's just because it's a page with checkout, check-in, and publish enabled, then it's a little bit different, and it's not something we want to talk about today. So I've just disabled that for now. So if I save my flow, I come back to my news, and let's say we want to edit a news story. So Company Legal Policy Center goes live. I want to change this one. So if I just edit this news story, and gets great feedback. Okay, if I just save that. Oh, actually, one thing to note on here, because it's in a page layout, and I did it for this demo, I haven't actually put the checkbox on the page layout. So let me just go into Edit Properties. Hopefully you can see it. I might just zoom in the screen a little bit so you can see what we're doing here. Give it another exclamation mark. Internal comms will hate me. So Center Teams is yes. If I save that, and I'm just going to publish it. Go into my flow, and hopefully we will see a flow run. Now these have been running a bit slow today, so I may not show you actually run live. Yeah, that's not triggering just yet. So, okay, we'll leave it there anyway. So the point is that is as simple as the flow is, and what you'll see then is you will actually see the news story be posted down here as you would expect. Obviously, using flow could do something a bit more intelligent. We could say if it's tagged as HR, place it in the HR side. If it's tagged as finance, put it in the finance. So we have all those options in there. Last check. No, it hasn't triggered. Okay, anyway, we'll carry on. So the next thing we want to do is, or the next example I'm going to show you, is surfacing actually some of your intranet content right within Teams. So this is something we've done for a number of customers, and we seem to have got really good feedback on it. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to take your actual intranet pages from SharePoint and we're going to surface them in Microsoft Teams. So the first thing we did was just fire up a new tab in Teams, a web page tab, and just put a link to the intranet in there. The users go in, load up the tab, log in, and they can actually view the intranet right from within Teams. It's great, but the experience didn't really feel right. So just putting that web page in there, it didn't feel right at all. So what we actually did is we took the page and we stripped a whole load of stuff out that's not needed to make it fit a bit more contextual. So the nice thing is, and we get a little bit techie, is the Microsoft Teams sends over a browser user agent. Okay, so all browsers identify themselves to the web server. Okay, when they make a request. And when you're in Microsoft Teams, it's exactly the same. Fortunately, the browser user agent identifies itself as Microsoft Teams. So what that means, when we customize the intranet, we can actually identify the user agent and then we can make changes to the page based on what browser it's coming from. In this case, we can say, oh, if you're being loaded by Microsoft Teams, strip off the navigation of the head, all the headers, everything, all the footers, and just show the content pane within the Microsoft Teams tab. So we don't have to do a lot of extra work, or we don't have to recreate web pages to make them fit in Microsoft Teams. And that's worked really well. So what we can do now is, if you remember the Teams view I showed you before, and we had a different channel for each department or each office location, what we can do now is we can take just that department intranet page and embed that into a web page tab within Microsoft Teams. So when you're in that area, you go through, you have your conversation, you have your files, you have everything else you want to bring in, but then we show you the intranet page there and then as well. Now, one thing to be mindful of, if you're stripping out the navigation at the top and things, that users start clicking the links. If they start clicking links to other parts of the intranet, then they may end up a little disconnected from the context they started in. So just, again, think about your page structure as you're putting that together to make sure it fits in that, in that way. So I think that looks pretty good, to be honest. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at Powerups. Another way we can bring our intranet content into Teams is by using Powerups. So I mentioned before, I'm a big fan of Powerups. I've done a whole bunch of projects, but we need to start thinking about how we resurface our content. So we've said over and over and over that we want to keep our intranet being our authoritative source of content. But that doesn't mean it has to be the presentation layer for every different user. So we can build Powerups to surface intranet content. The great thing is we can embed Powerups into Microsoft Teams in a tab, just like we did with the intranet pages. So maybe the intranet page isn't the right way to surface it. So what we can do, we can actually build some interactions in Powerups that gives a user more of an application feel to interacting with that content. So maybe we're thinking here about where we want some user input. Maybe we want some more flashy presentation of that content, or maybe we want them to fill in some forms or put some complex scenarios on there. And then that will submit back to the intranet or whatever else, whatever other sources it might be. But that's a really neat way of doing it. So the nice thing here is it really lets us do rich content. So I really love this technique, and it's something I've been exploring more and more. And actually, we can use the same approach from Microsoft Forms. Again, forms, it's web-based, so it's easy. So we can take a Microsoft form that we may be normally surfaced on the internet, and we can show that in a tab or a number of tabs in Microsoft Teams. So it's the same approach for both. And what I'll do now, I'll just jump into a quick demonstration, and I'll show you a Power App that we can build that loads content from the internet and surfaces it into Microsoft Teams. Okay, so the next demonstration is the Power App. So what we're going to do is build a Power App based off some content from our intranet, and that'll allow us to embed it onto the Teams site to show the information there. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our Support Center intranet site, and we're going to call out the service updates. So you can see here we have service updates for the call center, for email, for internet access or for training portal, VPN, Wi-Fi, etc. This information is all stored in a SharePoint list, so nice and easy to get to. Probably can't see that. Let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, so if we just jump into Powerups, I've got a brand new blank Powerup here that I can start with. So the first thing I want to do is click the View tab and then Data Sources. Add a new data source. I go down to one of my SharePoint data sources. Put in I already have Support Center here at the top. And I want to load this from the Service Updates list. So connect to that data source. And I want to insert a gallery on here. Now I'm not going to make this look pretty or interesting or sexy in any way. It's just a quick demo to show you the capability and how easy it is. So now I've got a gallery on. I can go into my items and just choose Service Updates, which I just created. And then I can choose the fields that I want to show. So title, I want to show the title of it. Subtitle, the description, yeah, that looks fine. We don't have an image on there, so I can actually just go and delete the image. I'm going to break a couple of things just because there's references to the image for positioning. So if I just get rid of that one, that's fine. And then the width we want to make, let's make that about 250. That's fine. Let's make the description width wants to be quite a bit wider. Let's just tell you what we'll do. Let's make the gallery full page. So I'm sure you can make this a lot more nicer to look at yourselves. So the description over here, let's just copy this. So this side, and this can be this item dot service status dot value. Okay, maybe we just want a bit colouring in there as well, just so we can see. Let's set the text colour on here, depending on the value of it. So that's just going to be colour. So we can just do switch this item dot service status service status dot value, match value. So we're going to say if it matches the value of issues reported, then I want it to be RGBA. So let's just make it red, like Indian red, or make it green. Okay, so nice and easy, just shows a bit of colouring based on the value we have. We could click through to another screen, so for now we'll just leave it like that. So I'm going to save this. This is my Teams service status. Click save. And what I'm going to do is not take my Skype call, but I'm just going to then go and share this. Actually, I don't need to share it, so I've saved it. What I can do is now go into Microsoft Teams. I'm going to go into, let's go into a general. So what I can do now is click a new tab. I can choose Powerups from the front. And straight away, I can go to my Teams service status. It already finds it. So I need to share. I do actually need to share access to make sure other people can see it. So I can share this with everyone, so everyone in the business can view it. Make them a user, so share that. And then I don't want to post it to the channel, so save. So now what I have is I have a tab that shows a Powerup. So again, this is bringing my intranet content out of the intranet and into Teams. So people who are spending their life here in Microsoft Teams, they can view the conversations and the news updates, and they can also go to the service status for the intranet, and they can view it as a Powerup from here. Obviously, this can be a much richer experience. We can put images in here if we wanted to, make it a lot more engaging, but very easy. We just have another area where people can go and find out about what's happening. So that one's really helpful. Okay. Great. So the next thing we're going to look at is bots. This is something I really am quite excited about. I'm quite enjoying working with at the moment. Bots are getting a lot of attention from Microsoft. Okay, it's a big push from them, and bots and machine learning are two of the key scorecards that Microsoft's trying to perform against. So you probably hear them talking about this an awful lot. And I've got to be honest, building bots is actually easier than you might think. So what we can do, if we just take a quick look at our sample intranet page, and you'll find Atom. Atom is our friendly Apollo intranet helper bot. And if I just jump into it quickly, then I can ask it a couple of questions. So, hi Atom, how are you doing? Then maybe we'll just go and ask, how do I request holiday? Now I can see we get a response. Okay, so we tried to make our response a little bit funny. But you can see what's happening here is a link back to the intranet. So we have our call to action. And then maybe we want to ask it, where's the leads office? Okay, so you can find all these kind of these questions if you think about what questions you want to ask your intranet, and then we can load them up. So how do we do this? How do we make this work? Now, building a bot is actually a lot easier than you think. And this is based off the Microsoft Q&A maker. And here, what we're going to do is we're going to load in all of our intranet questions that we can think of. And then we're going to come up with some alternate ways of asking them. And then we're going to come up with some appropriate answers. So you might want to go and talk to the different people in your business about the types of questions they get. HR, what do people email you about or phone you about? What do they ask you that you would like to automate? So we're going to fill that in. What that'll do, that will allow us to train our bot service. Okay, so what it'll do, it'll understand the questions and it'll come up with alternate ways of asking that question. So hopefully people can type different ways of asking the same question, and then the machine learning aspect will understand that and it will actually give you a relevant answer. If it doesn't give you a relevant answer, then you can start adding extra questions in to make it more relevant over time. So once we've come up with our list of questions and answers, and we load them into the Q&A builder, then what we do is we hook this up to an Azure bot service. So you might be getting a bit more technical here. You might need some help from your IT pros to go and configure those services in Azure. Obviously, be aware you're also going to have some spend on compute times in Azure, so just be aware of what your app service might cost you month by month. There's an awesome Azure calculator there, so plug all your numbers in and you'll know exactly what it will cost you. Maybe. But straight away, out of the box, what we can see we have is we've connected a bot, we've connected it to a Q&A maker, and that's all we have to do. And right now, what we have is we have a web-based chat interface, very much like the one you just saw on my sample intranet page. And straight away, we can just type into here, ask it the questions we programmed in, and we get the answers. But web interface, great, okay, we embed that into the intranet, all well and good, but actually it makes it very, very easy to actually enable it on other channels as well, such as Skype for Business, Consumer Skype, Cortana, Slack, Facebook Messenger, Kik, and Microsoft Teams. So what I can do now, if I just shoot over to our intranet team page, our intranet team, then I can actually converse with my bot right here as well. We have the conversation platform, so actually we can converse with the bot. So I've got the same technology, the same bot, just surfacing itself right into Microsoft Teams. So again, the users don't have to go to the intranet to query the intranet for content. And of course, the call to actions in our answers are back to the intranet page again for the full, rich experience. Now, we might over time want to make our bots more complicated. Don't necessarily jump into this straight away. One thing you might find, if you don't come up with all the questions the users are going to ask, you either don't know that they're getting a response saying, I don't know how to answer that. But so there's some really great approaches you can extend this to in the future, such as if the bot doesn't have confidence in the answer it's returning, you could always get it to divert that question to an expert in the area. They provide the answer. That gets put to the user and also automatically loaded into the Q&A builder. Things like that are totally possible. It'll take some more development experience on your part, but it's definitely possible. And that can build some really, really rich experiences. But you don't need to do that straight away. Stick with Q&A Builder, and that'll get you off the ground more than effective enough, and then just build on that as it goes forward. So let's maybe just jump in, look at a couple of examples of how we can connect the bots to our channels and see what that looks like. So in this demonstration, we're going to look at how to create a Q&A builder, frequently asked questions, and then attach it to a bot. So we're going to go straight into QAmaker.ai, the website, and then follow through the steps. So step 1 is to create a Q&A service in Microsoft Azure. Click the button, it will take us through to Azure. And this gives us a screen where we can go through and create all of the services that we need to create. So I want to give our Q&A maker a name, so we'll just call this Teams Virtual Summit. Choose a subscription to load it into, so our standard one. Choose a pricing tier. I'm going to go for the free one, pick the one that's going to scale to your usage. And we'll create a new resource group to put all of our bot elements in, so we'll just call this Teams Virtual Summit. And go through and configure the rest of the options. So we want everything to be in UK South. Pricing tier, okay, so let me do a free pricing option here. Just check, see whether that's the limitation of the data center or not. Let's just see if we can do a free one in North US. No, it's not allowing it. Okay, so we'll stick with the UK South. I'll just delete this afterwards. Okay, so search location, I want this to run in UK South again. And our app name's fine. Again, everything run UK South, please. And I'm just going to turn off our pin sites here, just because we don't need it for this demo. You may well want it on for your own debugging in the future. So that's now going to go and deploy all of my elements. And we can just sit and watch those happen. I might speed this bit up a little. There we go, all done. So click into our resource group, we can see what it's created. We have a cognitive services, we have a app service plan, an app service, and a search service. The cognitive services element will power our free text analysis. And then we're going to connect our Q&A service to our knowledge base. So we're just going to refresh it so we can see the elements we've just created. Here's our tenant, our subscription, and the Q&A service. Give our knowledge base a name. And then what we can do here, we can actually populate our knowledge base from an online source. So if we currently have a PDF document, a Word document, or even a URL that has a whole bunch of frequently asked questions on, we can put a URL to it in here or upload the file. And it will actually intelligently go and identify questions and answers. It's really good. I did a demo on this previously, loading the frequently asked questions in from eBay, and it worked just fine. We could also load in some chat conversational pieces, whether it's friendly or professional, just generic responses to business text. Not sure why that just failed there. I think it's a blip because everything looks right. We're just going to try creating it again. Yeah, I think the technical name for that is a blip. Okay, so now we have our knowledge base. Now notice we wouldn't see the pre-populated elements in here. So what we can do is go and create our Q&A pair. So we've just put in a question. So maybe some generic hi, hello, how are you, things like that. General greetings. I mean, you can put as much or as few items in here as you want to. Then just put maybe what the answer is. Now we'll just add another question in quickly just for demo purposes. So what's the weather like? You can make your answers witty or serious, depends on the culture in your business. Looking out of the window. Right, we're just going to put that in to start with. So we're going to save and train it. Now when we train it, the machine learning aspects of the cognitive services, it'll interpret different ways of asking the same question, and it'll come up with a relevancy when a user enters a question about whether it thinks that question answer pair is valid or not. So now we're just going to test it. So we have a little test option here, and this should bring back our answers. There you go, that's what we programmed in. Quickly ask what's the weather like. And there you go, we have our answer. The weather. So we still get the same answer even though we didn't ask it precisely as we entered it, so that's quite useful. So it's obviously just picking up the word weather, and that's classifying it as a close enough hit. So let's ask it something it doesn't know about. You can see the end of Game of Thrones, no good match found in knowledge base. So if it can't find an answer with enough relevancy, then that's the answer it will give. So that's what we might want to do something in the future with something a bit more powerful to maintain that question and answer list. So we just publish that knowledge base to make it available, and that's deployed. So now it's ready to use, and it gives us some information that we need to do to access that Q&A set in some different form, and it gives us an option here to create a bot. So that's going to take us straight back into Azure. It's going to go and create a bot service and allow us to connect it to the question and answer set we just created. So we give the bot a name, then choose our location. Azure really doesn't want me to put things in UKSR. Figure some general stuff. It's already populated the auth key from the Q&A maker, so that's quite nice. It's been passed through. And I'm just going to turn application insights off and just auto create it. Gives it a horrible name, but it doesn't really matter for this demo. So that's now going to create as our bot service. You can see there, that's the endpoint key already populated. And we have a bot. Well, it's deploying at the moment. Well, I spent a lot of time, nearly 20 years ago at university, trying to write an ELIZA program as one of my projects, doing a lot of work on natural language processing, things like that, and it was way above my intelligence level. So the fact that Microsoft's making this so easy is incredible. I know just how much effort goes in behind the scenes to do this sort of natural language processing. It's quite phenomenal. Okay, so we have our bot created, and it's attached to our Q&A set. We can go in and test it. It gives us a little web chat interface here. Just wait for the app service to fire up when it's ready. So again, just like we did in the test screen, we should just be able to put in our sample questions. So hi. So there you go, we get the answer we expect from Q&A service. What's the weather? Yep, so that's bringing about the questions as we'd expect. So there we have a fully functioning bot. We can see here that out of the box it provisions that web chat, which is what we looked, but we can also create Cortana, a direct line channel, Teams channel, Microsoft Skype channel, plus a whole load of other ones, email and Slack, Skype for Business, Kik, Facebook, a whole bunch of channels, very easy to set up. So we're interested in the Microsoft Teams channel. Again, it just walks us through step by step how we can actually do it. We can also enable calling as well. So if we want to have a sort of telephone and voice calling capability. I'm just going to save that to enable the, of course I read the terms and conditions. So that's now published for Microsoft Teams channel. We've got some information here on how to test your bot in Teams and how to publish it, so you can just follow through those. But very easily we can just go and view it straight in Teams just to make sure it works. So this tells everything we need to do to create a manifest, so we can create the app in Teams to make it serviceable and accessible. You can just walk through that if you want to. We're just going to bypass it for now, and we're just going to do it as a quick test. Let's go back into our channels. I'll just click Microsoft Teams from here, then that'll actually launch Teams. I just want it in the browser, so let's get rid of that dialog. and open it in the browser. Because I have a direct link, I didn't need to publish the app just to go and find it, but it's in draft mode at the moment for me to test it. But I can see there I have my bots now enabled in Teams, so I can have a text chat directly in Teams. So again, the same bot that I'm using in my intranet that I could use from the web embed, I can actually bring that into here. So generally what I would do here is I would have my answers directing the user to where they need to go. So we can put hyperlinks in here as well. So that could direct users straight back into the intranet, maybe to an office location site or a HR form if that's what people are interested in. Now once that's published, what we can do, we can just go back in and we can just keep adding questions for it. So the hard bit of it now is about understanding what questions you want to load into your knowledge base. And all we do, when we create new ones, is we just add them into the knowledge base, put in our questions, think up some different ways of asking it, and then put our answer in. Now I've seen some good samples of businesses that have actually extended their bot, so if it doesn't get a relevant answer, then it will actually go off, ask a professional, return that answer to the user who asked it, and upload the question and answer set to the Q&A maker directly, so it's there available for people in the future. It's a little bit more advanced, but actually not too complicated to implement. It's pretty cool. I think John White presented that session at Ignite last year, so if you have access to those videos, it's worth going and checking that out. So when we've added our questions in, we just save and train, and then we publish when it's ready. So now we can just republish our Q&A set. So end users won't see the new questions until we actually publish it. So the first thing to try, if your updates don't work, make sure you published it. It'll only take a minute, it's pretty quick. There we go. So now go straight back in, we haven't refreshed anything, and we just ask our new question, what's for lunch today? And we can see we get our new answer back. So super simple, just like that. So the final way that I'm going to show you is actually using SharePoint Framework web parts. Did you know that your SharePoint Framework web parts can also be used in Microsoft Teams in a tab? I know, awesome, right? So just like Powerups and the example we saw before, what we can do, we can develop our SharePoint Framework web parts, have them hosted in SharePoint for functionality in our intranet, and also we can surface them in Teams. So within a tab, we can choose a SharePoint web part from the app catalog and show it right there in Teams. So the good thing is we get to code this piece of functionality once, and we can load it in both SharePoint and Teams. So this is a really great way, again, of bringing your modern experiences from SharePoint into Teams. So what I'm going to do now, I'll just jump into a quick demo, and I'll show you how we do that. Now, before I do so, one thing to be aware of, this capability requires a SharePoint Framework version 1.8. So go and check that out. The other thing you might realize there is you won't be able to do this on premises, because on premises 2016 and 2019 are fixed to a version of SharePoint Framework before 1.8. So this is going to be a SharePoint Online only thing. So let's go to a quick demo, and I'll show you how to create a web part that we can host within SharePoint and in Teams. Okay then, so in this demo, what we're going to do is show how to create a SharePoint Framework web part that we can use both in SharePoint and in Microsoft Teams. Now, I've started to put the web part together. Setting up a new web part can actually be quite a slow process, and I didn't want to waste time on it. So I've got a blank web part already done. What we're going to do is follow this blog post on docs.microsoft.com, which tells you how to build Microsoft Teams tab using SharePoint Framework. It's a very good post, well worth just running through and just using it to create your first one. Now, instead of running yo at Microsoft.SharePoint/SharePoint, I actually use npx. The reason I use this is because it's a good way that I can actually run multiple versions of the SharePoint framework on the same machine. So if I have projects that need different versions, this allows me to do it. So that's the only difference I've done here from the standard blog post. So if we just jump into Visual Studio Code, we can see our sample project here. And the first thing I need to do is just go and change the supported hosts so that I can tell it to actually run in a Teams tab as well. The only file I've added into Visual Studio Code before starting recording this is a manifest for the Teams tab, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So we'll just go in here and we'll just add in Teams tab as a supported host. And then what we're going to do, just update the webpart.ts file with some extra bits of code to make it Teams aware. So the first thing we're going to do is import start at Microsoft Teams. And then we're going to go down and we're going to create a variable to store our Teams context in. It just goes in the main webpart class. And then we'll put the onInit command in, and this is just going to load the Teams context into our Teams variable. Just copy and paste. And then we'll just override the render function with this sample here from the blog post. So our webpart's not doing anything at the moment other than the standard hello world. So we'll just copy that in. And I'll just update my style class to match my webpart name. And that's it. And that's all we need to change in the webpart to make it Teams aware. Next thing we need to do is to package and deploy our webpart. So we're just going to run build. Wait for that to complete. And then we can run gulp bundle ship. Just checking that we've got the Teams manifest file in there. We do. So the blog post tells us how to customize the Teams manifest file. It gives us a template, and then we just replace the component ID, the title, and the descriptions with values from the webpart manifest file. It's very straightforward, so it's easy enough to follow through from this article on docs.microsoft.com. Oop, we don't want that G in there. Let's just get rid of that. So gulp bundle -- ship. And then we can package our solution. When we package our solution, what that'll do, that'll create us a SharePoint app package that we can put into our app catalog. And that's what makes it available for SharePoint and also for Teams. So now what we can do is take the app package into our app catalog in SharePoint, and then just drag that in. It will prompt us to authenticate that we trust it. Yes, we're going to make it available to all site collections as well. Click deploy. And just to prove what we'll do, we'll go into a SharePoint Modern page, find our Hello World web part, and we'll embed that into our page. Now what we want to do is make that available in Teams. The way that we do this is from version 1.8, our SharePoint framework packages have a Teams folder with 2 icon files and then the manifest file that we've just created. And what we do is we zip these up. Now make sure you only zip up the contents of the folder, not the folder itself, otherwise it won't work. I'll just give it a friendly name to match our web part. And then we're going to go into the settings of our team, so manage team. Then we're going to go to apps, and then we're going to go to upload a custom app. And that will allow us to pick the Teams zip file, so just navigate back through so you can see where it is. The folder, and then as we upload it, we can see that that custom app is then available to use in that team. So if we go back into our general channel, create a new tab, and there we have our hello world. Don't want to post to the channel about it, save. And just to prove it works, there's our web part. So we have our web part, the same web part now in Teams and in SharePoint. Disappeared and it's back again. There you go. So if you want to do this, it's actually really simple, as you can just see. All you need to do is just go to that blog post and just follow it step by step. It's actually a very well written article, so it should make it nice and easy for you. So there we have it. There's a few ideas of how you can bring your intranet into Teams. Hopefully also a lot of background why you would want to do it and how you should engage your users with organisational information. Like I said before, I'm sure there's a ton of other ways that we can actually bring intranet into Teams, and I'd be really interested to hear what ideas you come up with as well. So I'm going to stick around for a little bit, so if you have any other thoughts or feedback, if you disagree with me, please put it in the comments or reach out to me direct. Just tweet me at Mark Stokes, and I'll be really happy to have a conversation with you about it. So hopefully there's some ideas, hopefully I've inspired some thought, and I very much look forward to seeing you at the next virtual summit, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this session. All right, thank you very much. Goodbye. And with that, I'm going to go back to something a little bit more productive.